When you're just getting started in podcasting, you have a lot of questions and you're probably doing a lot of research. And one of the biggest questions that we see everywhere is, and it's been this way for ages, is who is the best podcast host? Who's the best podcast company? And it is my job to tell you that it is Blubrry. We would love to have you as a customer, but I'm also going to say that the answer really varies depending on what you're looking for. So there are 5 areas that growing podcasts eventually care about. So I'm going to start with analytics or statistics, depending on what platform you're using. I know we use the term statistics here at Blubrry. Analytics is fine. They're the same thing. This is the area that creators love to obsess over. We've all done it to some degree. There's not a single podcaster that's like, nope, I've never worried about my stats, not once. They'll tell you that, but that's not true. Now, while I do think it is important to look at that big golden total downloads or total listens number, it's not the end all be all. There's more to your show than that. So don't get hung up on it. As your audience grows, you're going to need information that helps you make decisions about what you and your show do next. One of the biggest things I can recommend is to make sure that your podcast host can provide you with trends that you understand, because you're going to want to know which episodes continue to bring in people months after it's released, and you want to see what topics resonate with that audience so you can craft more episodes around it. It really helps you tailor and focus and hone in on what your show is and what your audience likes. Now, you also might want to understand how your audience consumes your content, like what apps are they using, how long are they listening. You want to make sure that you can understand that information. Now, good analytics should show you all of that, and if sponsorships or advertising become part of what you do in the future, that information is going to be super, super important, and you want to understand how to read it now rather than when they come knocking on your door. The next most popular area podcasters talk about is monetization, because a lot of creators want to make money from day one, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I've talked about it a lot in the past. Even if monetization isn't on your radar right now, it's worth asking whether your hosting provider can support it later. Most podcast hosting companies are going to offer some type of monetization support. You have things like programmatic ad insertion, dynamic ad insertion, or a premium podcasting option. And you can also inquire about those, study up on those more to understand what they are. But the real question is whether or not they're going to support the way you want to monetize. I've talked to a lot of creators, and some of them absolutely hate the idea of running ads in their content. But you also have others who are like, no, I think ads are fine, and my audience knows it because I want to make sure that I'm recuperating money that I'm spending to produce the show that is important to them. I've also talked to some podcasters that like to monetize through sponsorships. They typically have a large show, or they've found a sponsor who believes in what they're making. So they partner up early on or when they get bigger, and that's what they prefer. Now, there are other creators like myself who like to monetize through memberships. In my case, I love to be able to provide supplemental things to a dedicated audience, somebody that's really interested in what I am doing specifically. I'm not just another show. They're invested in what I'm doing. Those supplemental things could be ad-free episodes where maybe the public feed has ads, but because they are subscribed, they get the unedited ad-free version that may have some extra content. And I've also seen some podcasters who have exclusive member-only episodes or Discord servers that build a connection between them and their audience. And that's really what these membership styles are about, is really connecting with the audience that you've cultivated, and the most dedicated ones come out and they support you. If you're doing a podcast for your business, you're probably going to monetize through that consulting or coaching or courses or whatever services or products that are connected to your show. And there's no right or wrong. There's not a single universal answer of this is the way you have to monetize. Just be flexible and make sure that your podcast host is going to support that. Some of them do, some of them don't. Some of them just need to be reminded, hey, this exists. Are you interested in building something like that in your platform? Because that's what I want to do. Imagine that one of your episodes gets shared by a content creator or featured somewhere unexpectedly. Would your current hosting plan or even your current host still make sense if your downloads doubled overnight? So if you look at Blubrry, our plans are based on how much you can publish each month. There are other companies out there who will allow you to upload as much as you want, but if you hit their download threshold, they'll recommend that you upgrade to a different plan. And a host that looks expensive today might end up becoming much more expensive if your show just explodes. And if it does, I'm hoping that you're not surprised. A good host should not surprise you. You should be able to see that before or shortly after you sign up and just understand what you're getting yourself into. Ownership has been a core principle at Blubrry since day one, and we've always asked, do you actually own your podcast? That's a pretty complex question, and it is going to give a very complex answer. And I think doing an episode specifically on what it means to own your podcast would be great. So look forward to that in the future. I would just say that a lot of creators don't think about ownership until they have to. They just want to make their show, keep it going, but things can change, whether that's goals, the workflow, or maybe even changing from a podcast that was a hobby to a podcast that acts as a business. And when that happens, you don't want your episodes or your files or your feeds or your audience trapped inside a platform. You want to be able to move them easily enough. A good podcast hosting company should make ownership clear, and they should make it easy if you ever decide to leave, regardless of the reason. You should never be stuck on somebody's platform. Does that platform provide like a zip file of every file you have uploaded and published? Do they help you redirect the feed? So, if you move from one show or one platform to another, do they make it easy to go, hey, Apple, don't look at this feed anymore. Make sure you're looking at their new home. In the end, though, you don't want a situation like this to be a nightmare. And in the years that I have been helping podcasters, this has happened way too many times. And it is so frustrating because sometimes we at Blubrry are just kind of stuck. And we don't want you to have to recreate all that content, especially if you've been publishing for years. I've literally seen that happen. In a previous video, I talked about the different stages of podcasting and how shows mature over time. And your workflow might be one of the most important and most overlooked areas, especially when you talk about podcast hosts, because you do not want to fight your workflow when you're making episodes. Now, in some cases, you're probably not going to understand this fully until you're using your host's publishing method all the time. But if you watch some videos, you might pick up on it. And it might not give you a complete understanding, but it's going to give you something to go off of before you buy and before you commit. Now, if you already have a host and your show is growing, you might have more people on your team. You may be adding people, and they're going to need access to your show dashboard. I think it's becoming more commonplace, but look for a podcast host that has account sharing. That is going to make collaboration, publishing episodes, checking out your stats and managing things much better, and it's going to keep things more organized. That's also going to be a boon and help you stay consistent as your show continues to grow. So you want to have like a steady foundation for the entire team that is working on your show. So I guess now it is the time to make all of these areas practical. So instead of comparing hosting platforms feature by feature, I've got a few key questions to ask you. If your audience doubled next year, would this platform still make sense? If you wanted to monetize 6 months from now, could you do it without rebuilding your workflow? Is it really easy to get started? If you needed better performance insights and analytics, would the analytics that you get actually help you make decisions? If you wanted to expand into video or additional distribution channels, how easy does this platform do that? And do they have support that will help you along the way? And finally, if you ever needed to move your show, would you still be in control of your content and your audience? I mean, at the end of the day, you want to create the best episodes you can as easily as possible while understanding your audience and knowing that you can grow. And a good podcast host is going to make that as simple as possible. Now, if you already love your host, but you're unsure whether or not they can support where you're headed, I would definitely recommend reaching out and asking questions. You may end up discovering features you've never used. You might find plans that you didn't know existed because you asked. And you might even find out that it's time to start evaluating alternatives. Either way, you need to be making a decision based on where your podcast is going and not just where it is today. The best podcast platform isn't always the one with the most features. It's the one that reduces the amount of bottlenecks so that you can focus on making the best show possible today and in the future. So if you found this video helpful, please tap the like button, subscribe, and I'm going to be sharing more podcasting advice regularly. And if you're ready to start a podcast or move from another host, go to blubrry.com. We've linked it in the description, and you can get your first month of hosting for free.